Weymouth, to me, back in the 1960s when I was a teenager, was a magical place. I was in love with it, and the people, and especially everything about the White House Hotel. My older brother George met June, his wife-to-be, in the September of 1960 in Aldershot, which was our family home, whilst he was convalescing following a vehicle accident whilst in the army. Even though George was not to leave the army until December 1961, White House Hotel became the centre of June and George's world from 1961 onward. They were married in February 1962 at the White Parish Church, which was next to the hotel. Very soon after George's move to Weymouth, I began my visits there, meeting June's family and getting to know them and their friends at this wonderful place. One day, George said, "Come down and help me at the hotel." I decided to hitchhike. Dad insisted on taking me to the A30. I think it was Hartley Whitney. In those days, the A30 ran straight through the village. There were no motorways, and I don't remember any bypasses or dual carriageways. The A30 would take me to Salisbury and then via another road, high up over Salisbury Plain and Cranbourne Chase, offering wonderful vistas across the rolling countryside. I could then get to Dorchester with a short hop to Weymouth. I hitched a lift just before Winchester, where the A33 used to divide off to Winchester and Southampton. I was heading westward towards Stockbridge and Salisbury, and there was a fork in the road. In those times, no motorways. Sitting on the bank and overlooking the fork on a lovely sunny day, I hadn't even started hitching when a car pulled up. More than a car, this was a Ford Mustang. An open-top car, and the engine was throbbing away, an exceedingly rare car in those days in England. It was straight out of a Hollywood movie, red, a beautiful-looking car. The guy shouted at me, "Do you want a lift?" "Yes, please," I yelled and scrambled down the grassy bank. As I got in, I almost stepped on a massive great dog sitting in the footwell of the passenger seat. It was a red setter or something similar. Luckily, it paid no heed to me. So off we went, and did we go. The guy took off at a rate of knots, accelerating. I watched the speedometer needle rise rapidly until we were going over 70 miles an hour. I had never been in a car that speed before. He sped along the A30. For much of the time it was dead straight. We were on an old Roman road, as I found out later. At the crest of the hill, the wheels left the ground. I had my heart in my mouth. We eventually got to Salisbury, where I was dropped off. I was grateful for his lift, but also grateful to get out of the car. I found myself by the bus station. I think part of the open area was also a cattle market. To one side was a brick-built, rather plain building, and it served as a cafe and a pub. I went in and got myself a cup of tea and a very plain sandwich, the only type available, very typical of cafes in those days. Just a choice of ham and cheese. I had cheese. Soon after I boarded the bus to Blandford Forum. I'd always liked trips on buses, especially those on old-fashioned buses with their very comfortable seats. It was a Wiltshire Dorset district bus, painted red. It seemed to match the fingerpost road signs that they had in those days throughout Dorset, which were painted red. They were distinctive, but sadly there aren't many left today. I was relaxing. It was a relaxing and very pleasant journey, looking out of the window onto the gently rolling hills of the Wiltshire and Dorset countryside. I drifted off into dreamy thoughts without a care in the world. At Blandford Forum, I thought, I'll have another go at hitching, and literally just then a hay lorry came along. A low-back lorry, partially loaded. As instructed, I climbed onto the back of the lorry. It was a slow, old vehicle, which trudged along towards Dorchester, and I thought I was never going to get there. I felt like I'd gone back in time. However, it was pleasant. It was a pleasant afternoon, so no worries. At the last stage of the journey was a Morris Minor. As you come into Weymouth from Dorchester direction, you get to a hilltop and a gap in the hills when you look over the whole of Weymouth towards Portland. I'll always remember the first time I saw that view, and it's still in my mind today. You see for miles across the curving edge of Weymouth Bay and over towards the island of Portland, rising out of the sea, connected via a narrow isthmus to the mainland alongside Weymouth Harbour. After being dropped off on a bustling seafront in Weymouth, I walked up to the White House Hotel, a white Georgian manor house set in its own grounds, surrounded by a high wall next to Wyke Church. You couldn't see the house from the road, as not only was there a wall, but there was also evergreen bushes like rhododendrons, which gave it that secluded feeling. Entering the gateway, you're in another world, away from this modern world. There was a large, ancient trees in the grounds. I recall a Lebanon cedar tree to the left of the other trees, with the outbuildings to the right. In the centre was this white Georgian building, comfortably standing in its own grounds. The central portico had columns to either side, with the house extended on both sides. It wasn't a large building, but nevertheless impressive. 2-storey with Georgian windows and a fine grey slate roof. I'd arrived at my favourite place in the world.